It was a dream vacation. A father, a daughter, and a mother, 3 tickets to paradise aboard a luxury cruise ship. But on the third morning, only one person showed up for breakfast. The father and the 8-year-old girl had vanished. No blood, no struggle, no answers. 7 years later, in a rainy alley in Amsterdam, the mother, now alone, hollowed by grief, stopped in her tracks. Because standing in the shadows was a girl, wearing the same butterfly bracelet her daughter had the day she disappeared. Catherine Wilson couldn't sleep. Not that insomnia was new. 7 years of worry had taught her how to live on minutes of rest and gallons of coffee. But tonight was different. Her hands trembled as she clutched a wrinkled manila envelope filled with posters of her missing daughter, Claire, and husband, Daniel. The sun hadn't even risen when she climbed into her car, GPS set to Tampa, her next stop on a seemingly endless pilgrimage of hope. She drove in silence, the only sound the low hum of the road and her mind playing cruel tricks. Would Claire recognize her? Would Daniel still be alive? Back in 2016, their Caribbean cruise was supposed to be a celebration of life of recovery. Daniel had finally come through a difficult battle with depression. Claire had just turned 18. It was a fresh start until it became a nightmare. At port in Curaçao, Claire had asked to take a short walk. Daniel went after her when she hadn't returned after 20 minutes. Neither came back. Catherine had waited by the ship's railing, scanning every face that boarded. When the captain announced they were preparing to leave, panic set in. She pleaded with security, but jurisdictional issues stalled immediate searches. By the time local police got involved, the ship was gone and so were her family. Now, 7 years later, an unexpected call shattered the monotony. The woman's name was Sophia. Her voice held a gentle Dutch accent, but her words landed like thunder. Mrs. Wilson, I think I've seen your daughter Claire here in Amsterdam. Catherine's first instinct was skepticism. She'd heard this before, too many scammers preying on grief. But there was something different about Sophia's tone. Her details were sharp, specific. She had seen Claire in a bar in the Jordan district. Blonde hair, blue eyes, a butterfly bracelet. Sophia had lived in Orlando when the story broke, had seen the posters, remembered Claire's face. Against every warning, her mind screamed. Catherine booked a flight to the Netherlands that same night. Amsterdam was cold and unfamiliar, but something in the air, a sense maybe maternal instinct, felt electric. Catherine met Sophia the next morning. They walked the narrow, graffiti-covered alleys near the canal where Sophia claimed to have seen the girl. And then it happened. Across the street, exiting a small clinic, was a young woman. Thin, pale. Her clothes hung on her like a curtain, but her bracelet caught the light, a pink butterfly charm that Catherine had given Claire on her 13th birthday. She froze. Sophia waved down a passing officer and explained. The police, skeptical but cooperative, intervened. The girl hesitated, confused, frightened. She murmured something that made Catherine's blood run cold. Where's Victor? I didn't tell him anything. Inside the station, the truth poured out in pieces broken by tears. Yes, my name is Clare Wilson, she whispered. But they call me Tracy here. She had been abducted on that day in Curaçao, pulled into a van. Her father had chased after her and was taken too. But he didn't survive the night. He was beaten for resisting. Claire watched everything. The next years were a blur of drugs, confinement, and control. She was trafficked through several countries, first as a model, then a dancer, finally as a possession to a man named Victor. But something in her, the part Daniel had fought to protect, never let go. When Victor fell ill and loosened his grip, she slipped out one night to seek help. The clinic she visited was part of a city health initiative they notified police due to her condition. That's how Sophia saw her. At the police station, the officers confirmed her identity with DNA. There were long hours of interviews, legal filings, psychological evaluations, but none of it mattered to Catherine. All she cared about was that Claire, her daughter, was alive and standing in front of her. The girl who had once walked down a ship's deck under the sun now sat beside her, older, haunted, but alive. Claire sat on the edge of the hotel bed like it might disappear beneath her. Her posture was rigid, hands clenched in her lap, eyes fixed on the floor. Catherine watched from across the room, sitting in silence. There was no script for this kind of reunion. No guidebook for what to say to the daughter you'd grieved and buried 100 times in your dreams. She walked over slowly and knelt beside her. I don't know how to do this, Claire whispered. Me neither, Catherine said. But we can figure it out together. She reached out, placing a tentative hand on Claire's knee. For a moment, there was no response. Then Claire turned slightly, just enough to let her mother see her tears. Do you believe me? She asked. About all of it. Catherine didn't hesitate. I believed you the moment I saw that bracelet. They spent that first night awake. Claire didn't want to be alone. Catherine made tea, though neither of them drank it. Instead, they curled up on opposite ends of the small couch, speaking in slow, broken fragments. Claire spoke of the room she was kept in, of the names they gave her, of the rules she broke, of the beatings that followed. Catherine listened. She didn't cry, not in front of Claire. But when Claire finally drifted into restless sleep, curled under a borrowed blanket, Catherine went into the bathroom, turned on the faucet, and sobbed silently into a towel. Over the next few days, Dutch authorities helped expedite documentation and medical attention. Claire was weak, but stable, traumatized, but grounded. A social worker named Eva met with them daily. Eva was gentle, deliberate in her words. Claire is free now, but the body doesn't understand that right away. Freedom is a muscle that has to be retrained. Before flying back to the States, they visited a small memorial garden near the canal. Claire had asked to go. There, Catherine brought out a photograph. Daniel. Taken the morning they'd boarded the ship. Claire traced his face with a fingertip, her voice trembling. He tried to save me. He told them to take him instead. They didn't listen. She pulled out a folded napkin from her coat, something she'd kept all this time. On it, written in smeared pen, "If you get out, run home." It was Daniel's handwriting. Catherine clutched her hand. You did get out, you came home. Their return to Florida was quiet. Catherine had turned down all interview requests. There would be no cameras, no news crews, just family, just healing. The house looked exactly the same to Claire, yet completely unfamiliar. She walked room to room, running her fingers along door frames like she was touching the edges of a memory. In her old bedroom, the posters were faded, the books untouched. On her dresser was a small, dusty jewelry box. She opened it and gasped. Inside, untouched after all these years, was a tiny keychain, a glass dolphin, the souvenir she'd begged for the day before they vanished. She held it up, smiling for the first time in days. You kept this. I kept everything, Catherine said, even the stuff that hurt. Claire started therapy. Slowly, uneasily. Some days she didn't speak at all. Other days, the memories poured out like floodwaters. She painted too. Acrylics on canvas, abstract, chaotic, beautiful. When Catherine peeked at one, Claire shrugged. It's not supposed to look like anything. That's okay, Catherine said. Neither do our lives right now. They both laughed. Not much, but enough. A week later, Claire asked to visit her old high school. The staff arranged it after hours, private quiet. She stood in the hallway, touching the cold metal of the locker that had once held her books, her hopes. I wanted to go to prom, to graduate, to be normal. You still can, Catherine said. Not the same, Claire replied, but maybe something better. Spring arrived quietly. No dramatic sunrise, no signs from the universe. Just warmer mornings, birdsong, the scent of rain on pavement. For Claire, it was the first time in 7 years that seasons changed, and she noticed. She no longer jumped at car doors slamming. She no longer hesitated before turning on lights. And some nights, not all, but some she slept through till morning. That was enough for now. Catherine kept the house gentle. No loud music, no sudden visitors, just calm. Sometimes they did jigsaw puzzles together at the kitchen table, surrounded by the hum of silence and soft classical music. Claire said she liked the puzzles because they have edges, boundaries, and pieces that belong somewhere. Unlike me, she added with a laugh that wasn't quite bitter, just honest. Catherine reached over and handed her the corner piece. You always belonged, she said, even when you weren't here. They planted a tree in the backyard on April 17th, the day Claire came home. It was a red maple, strong, vibrant, symbolic. Claire named it Daniel, not because she wanted to bury her father's memory, but because she wanted it to grow. He told me to run. I did, and now I want to live. Therapy continued. Claire started attending a small survivors group once a week. Other girls who had been taken held silenced. Some were older, some younger. None of them looked like victims. They looked like fighters. Claire didn't speak for the first 3 sessions. Then one evening, as someone described the sound of the sea from a locked room, she said, "It wasn't the sea I missed. It was my mother's voice." The group fell silent. Then one by one heads nodded. She began drawing again, but this time her subjects weren't abstract. She painted memories she wanted to reclaim. Her 10th birthday party, The time she broke her wrist skating and Catherine let her eat ice cream for breakfast. Daniel playing guitar by the porch. These paintings didn't just fill canvas, they filled space. On the walls, in their hearts, inside her. By the end of summer, Claire applied for community college, art therapy. Not because she wanted to become a counselor, not yet, but because she knew what it meant to lose your voice and find it in color. I don't want to tell people how to heal, she told Catherine. I want to sit beside them while they do. On the anniversary of Daniel's birthday, they drove to the sea, the very same coast where they'd first boarded the cruise all those years ago. They brought the last thing Daniel ever wrote, a folded page Claire had hidden for years in a plastic sleeve beneath her mattress. Don't forget who you are. You're stronger than this storm. You're my everything. They lit a candle, let it float out into the water, and as the tide carried it away, Claire whispered, I remember now. In the weeks that followed the ocean visit, a stillness settled over the Wilson home. Not an eerie silence, but the kind of peace that follows a storm when you step outside barefoot and feel the earth still warm from lightning. When the air smells new. Catherine started gardening again, not out of habit, but as an act of grounding. Claire joined her. At first, she only watered the basil, quietly. Then she began asking questions. Did you keep all my stuff after I was gone? Everything, Catherine replied. Even the broken shoelace. I couldn't let go of anything that still remembered you. They laughed together for the first time that day. One afternoon, Claire discovered a box under her bed. Inside were dozens of letters Catherine had written over the years. Not mailed, not finished. Some started with, if you're alive. Others were simply confessions. I dreamed of you last night. You were standing in the kitchen holding your sketchbook. I yelled at your photo today. I hope you forgive me. I still buy strawberry yogurt just in case. Claire read until sunset. Then, without warning, hugged her mom tightly and whispered, thank you for never closing the door. They began cooking dinner together. One night while chopping onions, Claire said, did you know he sang to me? Catherine looked up. Who? Dad. In the van, before they took him away. She stared at the cutting board for a long moment. He held my hand, whispered a lullaby, told me I'd survive this, said you'd come for me. Catherine placed the knife down and simply held her. He was right. Months later, Claire wrote her first public piece, a short essay titled, The Girl Who Was Found. In it, she didn't describe the trafficking. She didn't name her captors. She didn't relive the horror. Instead, she wrote about the moment she saw her mother in that Amsterdam alley. About the exact second her body remembered what safety felt like. About how you can be both broken and beautiful and still whole. I wasn't rescued, she wrote. I was remembered. A publisher picked up the essay. It was read at a UN panel on missing persons. Catherine sat in the back row, clutching tissues and pride. When Claire finished, the room was quiet for a moment too long. Then came the applause. Not for drama, for bravery, for truth, for choosing to live again. The last piece of the puzzle arrived in an envelope. A necklace. It was from one of the clinic workers in Amsterdam. They'd found it tucked into the lining of Claire's old coat. A small silver pendant engraved with 3 letters, DWC, Daniel William Clare, her father's initials. She wore it every day after that. Over her heart, close to her breath, next to her second chance. 1 year later, Claire stood at the edge of the same dock where she'd last seen the ship that changed her life. This time no suitcase, no cameras, no destination, just still water and sky. Catherine stood a few steps behind her, giving space, but never stepping away. Claire took a deep breath. You know what I'm most afraid of now? Catherine shook her head. Not losing anything again, Claire said, but not living what I still have. Her mother stepped beside her, tears rising. Then let's live it, messily, loudly, together. They stood in silence, not the silence of grief, but of arrival, of finally coming home. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that hope, no matter how long it takes, is never wasted, share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you do if someone you lost suddenly reappeared after years? Like this video to support true human stories that matter. Subscribe to Tim's Stories and turn on notifications because real life writes the most powerful endings. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder. Even the darkest journeys can lead back to light.